Hi, and welcome to Journey Forward with Jory Rose, where you will gain insights, tools, and inspiration to get unstuck and live your best life. Jory is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a passion for helping people cultivate awareness and authenticity so they can show up fully in all aspects of their life. And now, here's Jory.
Hey everyone, it's Jory Rose. I hope you're staying healthy, staying safe, and staying sane during our shelter in place as we're all home. To help support you through this journey that we are all on, I wanted to remind you that in my Journey Forward Facebook group, which you can go to the show notes to access the link, I am doing meditations 6 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday mornings at 8:45 a.m., Wednesdays and Sundays at 12:30. The Wednesday and Sundays are going to be longer, about 20 to 30 minutes, whereas the weekday mornings are about 5-minute meditations. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday evenings, and Friday evenings at 6 p.m. I'm going to be doing mindfulness tools in relation to how we can all cope and survive, and not just survive, but really grow during this time. And on Saturdays at 11 a.m., I will be doing a live Q&A. So please, anything I can be in support with you around, any tools coming from a mindset of mindfulness, meditation, mindset itself, therapy, all of this is where I can come in to really be a resource and support to you. So I hope that you find these extra resources valuable to you. And if anybody you know would appreciate joining in as well and joining our community, please invite them into the group. Again, those links are in the show notes. All right, be well and enjoy today's episode. Hi, and welcome back to Journey Forward with Jory Rose. I cannot wait for my conversation with Lindsay Weisner to unfold this afternoon, because I know we're going to take you guys on some really interesting and deep and yet lighthearted and important topics. And I know in the past when Lindsay and I have chatted, it's just been a lot of fun, regardless of whether we're talking about some really deep shit or not. Lindsay has a great energy in which she brings to this work. So, Lindsay, welcome all the way from back east, as I am here in California. And
I know. And one of us keeps messing up the time zone. It's probably me, because math. So
if we could just get on the same time zone.
Oh, God.
But we're here now. So, that's what's important. I want to talk about your book, and we'll get there, because I think it needs to be shared. And knowing that the book launch got overlooked with, coronavirus and all the other stuff that.
Understandably so, but not to my dear heart.
Understandably, right? But I do want to talk for a few moments about your connection to passion around working with teenage suicide and depression.
Sure.
And, this was something that, we did speak about, you and I, before. And, your mother, as you just described, very messy, attempted 9 and, hopefully not counting more times.
There will be more. She will live to try another day, unfortunately.
And that's the reality of her health right now, and what maybe has been for a long time. And as I shared with you, and I believe I've shared before on the podcast, my own father did commit suicide when I was 10. And there's so many layers of areas that we can talk about within this, whether from a child with a parent who's committed suicide, but you also do a lot of work with teens. And so what was it that got you into that work?
Jory, I just need to tell you, by the way, when we got off of our, pre-interview, I was so struck by the fact that you had shared that with me, because it does seem very personal. And even hearing you say that you think you might have shared it before, that makes you feel even more personal. So I feel very chills in the back of my neck, honored, because I think there is some sort of shame or self-doubt or seed that has gotten planted in me personally, that I am not worth enough for a parent to want to stick around to see what I can do.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to talk about. It took my dad died when I was 10. And I literally only found out how he died maybe 5 years ago.
What were you told?
Nobody ever told me. So here's the story. And I think this is important for people to hear, because part of what I was going to start off saying was, I didn't easily share that information until my mid-30s.
Okay.
Because I felt too shameful around it. I thought his suicide was a reflection on me somehow.
That is what I was trying to say, but you said it much more eloquently. Yeah.
And I was embarrassed. And it felt, you know, nice Jewish parents didn't do that. And I hate to use that kind of connotation, but, you know, it's like, we're a good family. Like, you know, that, but yet mental health affects everybody equally. There's no hierarchy to suffering.
I've got nice Jewish parents and a doctor for a dad, and yet.
Yeah, you know, so any perception of who it might affect is a misperception. But it wasn't until I was able to separate out my own identity and his story. And that his story was not my story. It was a piece of my story, but it didn't define me, it defined him.
Right.
And so when my parents got divorced when I was young, and I would visit him rarely because we lived in the Bay Area and he was down in LA. So I saw him, you know, winter break and summer for 2 years.
Can you give me an idea how far apart that is? Only because I'm not, you know.
Yeah, it's an hour-long plane flight or a 5 or 6 hour drive.
Gotcha.
So different parts of the state. And
so we would say like from New York to DC.
Sure. So I was about 8 or 9. It was a kind of an amalgam of all my memories at certain ages because, you know, I was either like 6 or 8 or 10. I don't know exactly when, but I can give some sort of framework or root marker. And I was at his house, and as curious kids do, I opened up his nightstand drawer, and inside I saw a gun. And I freaked out.
As one should.
And I did nothing about it. I don't know what to do, what to say, who to tell. I did nothing about it. So my guess is a year and a half later when he died, all my mom said to me was, Daddy did something to make himself die. And because I had seen the gun, I never asked a question and I was never told.
Is that the answer? Did he, or you still don't know?
Well, it is the answer, but no one really ever actually said the words to me until more recently. And part of it was my sister had to get a copy of a death certificate for some potential insurance policy that was still out there in the world that we thought like, oh, here's our big windfall. And, you know, it was like $200 or something.
Yeah, yeah.
But she had to order the death certificate. And as I saw the death certificate, it said, you know, cause of death. And so that was the first time I ever was confirmed gunshot wound to the head. And around that same time, which was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I was talking to my uncle because I wanted more information. And I know he died in his apartment. And I knew that my uncle lived in the same apartment complex as him. And I learned for the first time in my late 30s, he died in my uncle's apartment, not in his. And I had never, ever known. So all those years that I had imagined this death scene wasn't even in the right apartment because no one ever told me.
Which is also fascinating from a really morbid perspective as to why it was your uncle's apartment and not.
He wanted to be found sooner. And my uncle wasn't there that night. He was with his girlfriend at the time, who then became his wife. But he
So why would you want to be found sooner?
Who knows? I don't know. How long it would have taken him in his own apartment for someone to find him.
It's interesting because on my podcast, the episode that I just aired last week was it was another conversation with a woman whose mother has attempted suicide, and we do carry such a stigma, you know, and such guilt and such you know, I didn't start speaking publicly about this until September, like this past September. And when I was 18, you know, summer after freshman year of college, I was home and my mother and I were fighting, as is sort of a normal growing pains. You know, it's like the damn it, there's a great psych term for it, for like the rapprochement, or the, you know, like the, you know, you do it at 2, you do it at a teen, and I would say you also do it at when you go to college and what it, you know, for those non-psych geeks out there, it's really just a way of trying to establish independence. Like you need some friction to establish independence from your family or your parents or your caregiver. And so we were having a fight about something probably ridiculous. And she yelled at me, "You're upsetting me so much. I tried to kill myself and it's your fault."
Wow.
And 4 years later, same exact scene replayed itself with my brother, who's 4 years younger than me. And as time went on, it, you know, like that, when she told it to my brother, it was a weird ass summer because we definitely were tiptoeing around. Like,
Sure.
if her bathroom door was closed, we were afraid we were going to go in and find her dead in the bathtub.
Right.
You know, and her methods have varied. She's pretty much tried everything. Some are comical, like the time that she slit her wrists, and as she was being carried out on a stretcher, she started yelling that my father had done this to her. See, there is a humor there.
Yeah.
She once drove her car into a liquor store, but I think she was just high or drunk. In Florida, liquor stores are steal, so no success there. But when my father came to get her, I'm sorry, like a Quentin Tarantino movie, like she hopped into his car, drove away. And in Florida, apparently you can buy hard liquor at 10 a.m. So like she grabbed her tequila, hopped into his, you know, drove away. But this was always something that was either a secret or in denial, or we didn't talk about it. Like we would talk about having interventions for her for the mental health / substance abuse, but we would never talk about the fact that she had tried to kill herself and that she is so narcissistic she has no space for anyone else. The day
Well, and I have to say, you know, I can imagine for someone who's in a space who's suicidal, that failing at your own suicide has got to only feed into a bigger story of some.
I agree, but my father explains this as she's broken into the safe and taken the pills that would not kill her. But the amount of times she has tried are just too many to, you know, like I'm on your side with this, but so many times. And then we've had so many interventions, and the final sort of straw for me was last January, in the course of a month, 2 teenagers from a local high school committed suicide successfully. And I apologize. I'm not yet sure where I stand on the committed, but
the languaging,
yeah, I know. I'm gonna work on it and think about it. But so they both killed themselves, and then there was another one at another. You know, we had like 7 within the course of the last 14 months.
Wow. As a community, that's hard to hold space for.
Yeah, and it's not. We're in a community called like the 5 towns because there's like 5 towns and we're all so close together. Like if you look at the coronavirus confirmed cases on a map, I literally turned to my husband last night. I was like, which one is us? Because they're all so close together. Not that I care to look at it, but this group of moms that I'm in this mass text with send me an update every morning as though that will somehow help. But
people have a funny way of managing anxiety in times of stress.
It's exactly. And by the way, I just put my today's Psychology Today blog was about how maybe you should think about your attachment style as far as how you manage your media input in this time. I think it's brilliant, and I think there's about 6 people in the world that will appreciate it, but you're probably
one of them.
I know. So that's why I'm telling you, you got to read it because I thought it was brilliant. But
all right, I look forward to reading it.
Good. But when we were in August, there were when I suddenly can't reach my parents on the phone and my sister-in-law can't reach them, we know that something is wrong. And so in August, there were like 2 different weeks where like 10 days went by and we couldn't get in touch with them. And finally, the second time, my parents have like full-time help. She's like a live-in housekeeper essentially. And I called her and I was like, where are they? What's going on? And, you know, she's of course torn, but finally she She put me in touch with my father, who told me that twice in the month of August she had been found totally unresponsive. And she, of course, denied taking anything. She was unconscious for days, admitted to a psych ward of a hospital for a 72-hour watch. And the second time it happened, my father, like, listening to her speak, she didn't sound, it sounded like a TBI, traumatic brain injury. But the second time it happened, my father finally decided to do something we've been talking about, God, for at least 14, 15 years, which is we have a Marchman Act. And what it is it's kind of intended for people that are on like the other sides of the bell curve, either wealthy housewives who have nothing to lose by just drinking, drugging, and trying to kill themselves, or welfare recipients who don't go to work and therefore have nothing to lose by, following the same negative patterns.
Right.
To clarify, I'm not saying that all welfare recipients fall into this category. I'm just sort of explaining that from my perspective, this law was invented for people on either extremes who refuse to take care of themselves.
Yeah.
So my father grew a set of testicles, which he's lacked for years, and started the proceedings. And there was a hurricane and then a power failure and all these. Oh, and then one time she tried to kill herself. So somehow that delays a trial, which makes no sense. She ran into the middle of a highway. So apparently we had to go back to the 72-hour hold. And so eventually the trial was held. She had been sober then for 3 months, still cuckoo pants crazy, never called me or my brother once to check on us or the grandkids or anything. And they went to the trial. My father testified, probably the toughest thing he's ever did.
Wow.
My aunt, her sister, testified, and then her public defender pointed out that someone at the facility had forgotten to sign a form. And my mother was released immediately.
Oh, man.
And so at that point, I decided, I had already started seeing some suicidal teenagers, but not revealing my own, association history, whatever. And
your connection to it, your story, I mean, very closely related to you. Yeah. Yeah,
I had started a podcast. Teens started killing themselves in January. I started a podcast probably in April, May. And suddenly it all came together, and my podcast and going on other podcasts became my voice. They don't know that I talk about this openly, but at this point, I don't think it would matter if they did, because it's not my secret; it's my story, and it should never have been any of our secrets,
Yeah.
And so,
and the more you share your story, the benefit you are to people who are experiencing something similar.
I think so. There's a lot of us children
like
of suicidal people,
Yeah. It's interesting. I have one of my cousins is very involved in, she's a delegate because she's really passionate about gun safety.
Yeah.
And I recently was talking with her, and she actually said to me, she goes, Jory, by the standards of gun violence, you are considered to be a survivor of gun violence. True. And it was so fascinating, because I feel, while it's my story, I also feel a big disconnection, partly because
you were young.
I didn't really know my dad very well. My parents had been divorced for a few years. I didn't live with him. It didn't take a lot out of my everyday life. It was more conceptual than relational. And I've created, the ability to tell it as a story rather than from that very vulnerable, shameful place. So when she said to me, I was a survivor of gun violence, it was like, wait, what? I remember calling my sister and was like, oh my God, did you know that we're in the category of considered survivors of gun violence? And it just, I'm not sure it was a healthy or helpful, quote, label, but it was
I don't think it is. I mean, it's yours. It's yours.
But I didn't find it as such, but yet there are so many things that in talking about suicide can be helpful and healthy in giving language and space and community and conversation around.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like I literally accidentally fell into a suicidal teen specialty, or a suicidal anything, but the teens are a little bit more difficult because they're, impulsive, prefrontal cortex hasn't caught up with, amygdala, et cetera, limbic system. But I think that part of why I am, Jesus Christ, knock on all the wood in my room, but so far, Jesus Christ from a Jew, whatever, I could have done the thing, but, is because I know that it's not so easy to succeed, and I'm glad for that. But I also, that means that you tell me that you have thoughts, I ask more. You tell me that you have a plan, I ask more. It comes down to the intent. And so far I've been pretty lucky in that I'll let you have all the thoughts and feelings you want. Mm-hmm. I'll even let you have a plan, because most of your plans are not going to be so great. It's the intent that I focus on. And too often I find that psychologists, social workers, whatever, will refuse to see a patient with some sort of admitted suicidal ideation. Or right when my mom got let out from the hospital, I got a call from a woman who had just gotten out of a hospital. And I was like, you know what? I want to help, but I don't know the answer. So let's meet and find out more about your story. Yeah. And as it turned out, she was admitted on a 3-day weekend. And so she got stuck there. And her when she got out, her psychologist and psychiatrist never called her back because they didn't want the liability. So I never thought I would be able to do this, and now that I'm doing it, I feel so passionately. I just want to try to, so cheesy, to try to make a difference.
Well, and equally as cheesy is you've been in a position in which you've been experiencing this at the center of your core nuclear family. And so you've seen it from the inside out. And I think there are few people that have that perspective to be able to offer in a mental health mindset, right? So here you have this very empirical knowledge.
There may be more of us, but okay.
Right? So I mean, sometimes we don't always know what we're being called to do in this world. And right, wrong, or indifferent, you found yourself in the middle of this with your mother for over 20 years, and now you're being called to do this work because you actually got something real to share.
Yeah, I find myself, sorry, I interrupted.
I was just gonna say, I think suicide is one of those things that unless it hits close home, it's very conceptual.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
We're like twinsies. I find myself quoting Dumbledore a lot from from Harry Potter, in that the story makes a lot more sense looking backwards than it does looking forwards.
Steve Jobs had a similar quote of, you can only connect the dots looking backwards.
So who do you want to accredit it to? Steve Jobs?
Well, I've never read
Dumbledore?
Any of the Harry Potter, so I'm going to go with Steve Jobs. But you stick with Harry Potter because they're saying the same thing.
I don't know. It's I was pregnant for the last one. So the only thing I had to look forward to was the release of the last one.
But it's true, right? But whatever it is, you're here now, you're doing this work, you're showing up. And I've got to believe that part of what helps get through to these suicidal teens you're working with is the compassion from having been a teen whose parent was in that place.
I hope so. I'm also obnoxiously open about my experience. And I know we're not supposed to be, but I also know that it feels most comfortable to me.
I think you and I talked about this before, that to stay within those parameters of the therapist-client relationship in which you're supposed to role model vulnerability and open communication through a one-sided relationship feels so backwards to me. Yeah. Because what else could we do to strengthen connection and compassion through our own vulnerability and role modeling self-disclosure and role modeling in service of the work, but not gratuitous self-disclosure, but in service of the work. Yeah. I think it is so necessary.
I do too. I also live in a small town, and connections happen, and And I'm pretty open. Like, the only question I haven't answered, probably not the only, but like I went to this 20-something-year-old kid asked me how many people I'd slept with, and then he guessed like more than 50, and I was like, oh, this is no, and I'm not answering any questions.
Yeah.
Because thank you for calling me, whatever. But I agree. I think we have to share a part of ourselves, and we want a part of them shared back.
So how did that work in working with suicidal teens lead you to the book you've got?
It totally didn't. I can make up a story, but the truth is, I was so I tend to have these like minor midlife crises right before like big birthdays.
Mm-hmm.
And I was turning 40 in September. This is 2 years ago. And I decided to start knocking some things off my bucket list. And one of them was learning to surf. And
Awesome.
so I made it through one surfing lesson. And the kid was like 16 and I felt like an a-hole. But I ended up throwing out my back, which is not unusual because I've done it 8,000 times before. Actually, I think I have the same thing that your fiance does, spondylolisthesis. So
spinal stenosis, yeah.
Yep, all of them. So I was laying in bed, and a woman a fellow writer who I had met through Tinder, reached out to me and was like, "Can you take a look at this book and tell me what you think?" And when I did high-end painkillers, but also B, necessary painkillers, not freelance painkillers, but B, I realized...
Did you say you met her on Tinder?
Oh, no, I did say Tinder, but I meant Twitter.
Okay, I'm like, wait, there's a way I can meet other authors on Tinder? Because that would be kind of awesome.
No. God,
Twitter, okay, got it.
Yeah, I met her on Twitter because in 2014, I won the Cosmopolitan first ever fiction contest.
Wow.
Yeah, they were kind of disappointed because I was like a 32-year-old with 2 kids. And like, I think they were looking for someone who would like show up at the office and be like, "This is awesome." And I was like, "Yeah, I've worked in a couple places like this, like doing internships." Also, there were no blowjobs in my my excerpt. It was simply an excerpt from my book. But the book did land me a fiction agent. And then I started following hashtags on Twitter. But to be clear, like the woman texted me and was like, "In an hour, we're going to announce it and tweet it to you." And I was like, "Cool." And I was pushing my double stroller by a bagel store. And I walked into the bagel store, handed my phone to the youngest kid I could find and was like, "Dude, I need a Twitter account." And somehow I ended up meeting this woman who lives 10-15 minutes from me. And
Wow.
So we would like do like writing workshops with each other. And it lasted a while, and then she started substitute teaching, and my kids got a little older, so I was working more. And she sent me this book, and as I was reading it, like my brain started buzzing, and I was like, all of these steps, there's only 10 of them, but all of these things can be backed up by actual science and research. And scariest thing I've ever done. Do you, besides surfing, but whatever, do you want to co-author? Because I can back this up. And so she said yes, because I'm a doctor. So I got street cred. And then we solicited 24 expert writers to add something about how they defined happy or how they found happy in their careers that are not always happy careers, or like life after cancer, or any of these things. So it ended up being this really big, great project. And it started a year before I had anything to do with suicidal teens. As the launch started coming up, I said, I really want to bring this in. Like, I really want to. So I started trying to coin the hashtag 10 steps and the stigma. I reached out to authors and celebrities and anyone I could think of to be like, will you donate something? I had this vision of people walking into, there was a museum space that got donated to us because we're all messed up from this teen suicide in this town. And so I had this vision of people walking into this museum and seeing this wall of support from celebrities, authors, athletes, politicians, etc. And then everyone that came was going to get 5 raffle tickets. And if you bought a book or showed proof of a book, you'd get 10. And my idea was for everyone to leave a little more happy than they came. Not that that's going to prevent suicide, but that when you're a teenager and you're impulsive, maybe one more day to think about it.
Yeah.
Like, would be enough. And then the coronavirus crushed my dreams and wouldn't give me any seltzer. So,
This is a reality we're all living in.
I know.
Yet, you still have authored the book. So you get to cross off the bucket list item. So at least there's that.
Oh no, actually it doesn't get crossed off until I'm on the subway and see someone reading my book.
You've got really specific requirements for success, Lindsay. If you lower
I'm
them a bit,
really difficult bitch. Have you not figured that out?
So if you lower the criteria, then you've already succeeded. Just saying, because it might be a while till you can be on a crowded subway with people reading books.
Okay, so you are right, but to return to my mother, like the day I defended my dissertation successfully, we were driving home. They had flown in for it and brought my 2 elderly grandmothers. And my mom turns and goes, "I remember the day I got my doctorate." She never got her doctorate. Ugh. So I think a part of it is I need those high expectations to, I don't know, to somehow prove that I'm sure it's hugely psychologically fucked up, but I need high proof of having achieved goals because it's always been so hard to prove it to everyone else.
Yeah, I get that. I know there have been times where John will ask me, like, at what point will you realize you can do whatever you say you're going to do? Like, at what do you need to keep proving to yourself for you to finally get that satisfaction or accomplishment? And, maybe the bar keeps moving and that's okay too.
That's okay with me too. My husband, initially when I was trying to sell my fiction book, my husband was like, "You wrote a book, you achieved your goal. Who cares if people read it?" I'm like, record scratch, no.
Yeah. So hold up your book so those that we are being able to see can see the beautiful cover. 10 Steps to Finding Happy, a guide to permanent satisfaction.
Yes, and you can order it on Amazon, although there's apparently no one in the Amazon offices, but let's pretend there is. And if you like it, please give a review on Goodreads. You can find me on Instagram at Neurotic Nourishment or at Psych Shrink Mom or at 10 Steps to Finding Happy. I also recently got that blog. I was a shitty intern, so I can't believe I got a blog. Like literally,
I
was like
excited for you because when you and I talked a few weeks ago, you said, "Oh my God, you're the first person I'm telling. I just found out I got this blog," and I'm like, I feel so honored. I was in the right space at the right time. I literally
just found out, and I was like, "This is."
I gotta tell somebody. I'm telling you.
Well, I've published 3 now, so you should check it out. It's called The Venn Diagram Lifestyle, and I'm a big dork, so I love the name. And when I have to explain to people what a Venn diagram is, I explain it by saying, like, this circle is strippers, this circle is cats, and the middle overlap is people that don't like you touching them when they sit on your lap. I did not make that up. I stole it from a meme.
So I'm really curious. Before we wrap up, of the 10 steps to finding happy, which one is the one that is your favorite or that most resonates with you or the one that you find yourself talking or teaching about the most?
Hands down, I don't remember which number it is, but it's find your passion, find your purpose. Because there have been many points in my life that I feel, now I'm going to get teary. There have been many points in my life when I feel like I found my passion or my purpose. But right now, doing this work with these teens and also talking about it on podcasts, this is what makes me feel like my life has ended up in the correct direction. Again, this is where I'm supposed to be. I would love to save one life. But the other thing that I sort of realized from talking to you is it's not just about saving a life. Maybe it's about connecting with someone else and letting them know, like, it's not our fault that our parents are not willing to live for us. So
there's so many layers can come up around that.
Yeah.
And I just think having a less stigmatized conversation around it opens the door to what, whether it's healing. I recently was interviewed a woman for my podcast, and I was on hers, whose son commits suicide for, well, not for anything. He committed suicide over 10 years ago.
Oh.
And she's now a grief therapist. So it's interesting how our life,
there may be a purpose. I agree.
Our life unfolds in really fascinating ways. And I'm an optimist by nature, I have to say. So I do believe that this coronavirus pause that we are all being put on, it's gonna evolve into some massive humanitarian growth. I believe it's got to come out of that. We're all being forced right now to face all of our shit, because we can't run from it. We can't run to the bar in the same way and get a couple of drinks before coming home to your dysfunctional marriage and unhappy family life. You can't go to your yoga class or the gym to do the things that you used to do. And so I think as we get forced to find new ways to manage through whatever's coming up for us, hopefully there can be some more intention and less reactivity around how we manage our mental and emotional health and stability and well-being.
I agree. You know what I discovered over the weekend, while quarantined with my kids, is somehow my son and I have the same favorite poet. And it's William Butler Yeats, which is random. But he was like, you know what I found? And I love this poem. I was like, that's my book from like 11th grade. Let me tell you my favorite poem.
Oh, that's awesome.
And these are deep connections that we wouldn't have had if not for this deadly pandemic. So
it is. Well, and I'm so grateful to have connected with you. And when our pandemic is over, we are so hanging out.
Definitely. Thank you so much for having me on.
And Lindsay, I know that you bring a lightheartedness to the work, but I also know that you're carrying a lot of heaviness in the work that you're doing. And so I just really want to honor the space that you hold for many of these people. I don't discount how difficult it is. And I really feel like when you can do that sort of work, you're called to, because not everyone can hold that space that you are.
I appreciate it. And Jory, I love the yogi in you, and the light in me honors the light in you.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, stay healthy, be well. And I look forward to watching your book launch and go huge. So I'm going to take a picture of someone on our public transportation system reading your book, and then maybe you'll have made it.
Stop it. That would be I want to cry. That would be my dream come true.
All right. We're going to make that happen. All right, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
To continue your journey forward, find Jory Rose on Facebook and Instagram to become part of her growing community. You can also gain access to her meditations, books, online classes, or to sign up for an upcoming retreat, visit her at joryrose.com. That's JOREEROSE.com.